we are rebuilding our hole in the ground root cellar. I know a lot of people watched our first one there, and it was already built. So now we're rebuilding it after over a decade of using it. And we have to redo it because A, we want to make it a little bit wider with the growing family, and B, the mice finally worked their way into it. So we're doing a new one. So what we're doing is we're making a bunch of boxes like this. I'm using cedar wood because it lasts longer, better smell, less mildew problems. And if you come over here, so if you're going to go 3.5 feet, so not too close, Rex, with the camera, right about there, you'll notice that what we're doing is this one comes up to here, nailed into this one. This one comes up and over, so it's top. This one then becomes the bottom, this one becomes the top, and around. That way you can have them all 3.5 feet without adjusting. Just putting a few screws in, sorry, not screws, nails. And then we'll show you the next step. So you can pause that now, Rex. Boom! Alright, so Rex, bring the video over here. So we dug a 4-foot deep hole. We are so lucky that it's just clay and sand. So the clay is a little bit hard, but the sand was pretty easy to dig. And so we're just building each box. And can you see this, Rex, when you point the thing? Okay. And we're just laying them on top of each other right now to start. I'm not a very big human being, so it's hard for me to put the whole thing in. So I'm building a box, put it in, build another box, put it in, build a box, put it in. And here's the next two. Okay, make sure you're paying attention to what's going on.
I am.
Right. Build a box. We'll have to get a saw and get rid of that. And we'll show you the next steps tomorrow. But yes, we just have one more, and then we'll show you the next steps. Day 3 of the new root cellar. So as I said before, the hole was day 1. Day 2 is making the boxes, which you saw just earlier. Day 3, now we're keeping it temperate because we do get -40 here where we live in the winter, and an easy 30-35 degrees during the summer, which we just had while we were working, of course. So we also have a lot of mice. So we're going to be using this mesh. You can use screen, like some stainless steel screen, but if you got the funds for it, I would definitely do something a little bit more sturdy. So this is galvanized mesh. And then just some 1-inch insulation. I'm using R5. It's actually left over from when I built my dome over there. So what we're doing is, and I have some lovely help from a teenage boy who I used to teach many years ago. I won't say names for confidentiality. So we're putting the insulation right next to the outside of the box, and then wrapping the mesh around and stapling it in. Our next step after we get all 4 sides done and corners done is to backfill it. So you'll see that next. Very important. Thank you. As you can see, we've got the root cellar. It's got the insulation in there to help. That helps keep the temperature cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. And we've got the galvanized mesh to keep the mice out. We did have a problem the last time with our old one, but only after 10 years we had problems with mice, hence the new one. Now, before we go and fill it up the rest of the way, here's another important part, especially if you're living in a colder climate. If you don't go like below -20 or so, Celsius that is, if you happen to work with Fahrenheit, I'm talking Celsius right now. You probably don't need this step, you can get away with it. We do get to -40 Celsius, and that could really put the frost line quite low. So what we do is we just put a lip of insulation around, and all that does is keep the frost line from going right beside the root cellar, and you're going to have less chance of having frost issues. So what you're going to want to do is just kind of build it up a little bit so it's kind of tapered down like that. We're going to do that around the whole thing, and then fill the dirt all the way up to here. So the next part of the video, you'll see the the dirt will be all the way up to here, plush, and there'll be a bit of styrofoam around the entire root cellar. Okay, so the bib is all, the insulated bib is all in. And so now we need to make one more of those, very similar to the boxes that we stacked on top of each other there, but a little bit wider. So they're 3 inches bigger that I cut each board. And we made this box here. And we're gonna put that's gonna be the outside lid. So give me 2 seconds to put it into place and the video will continue. So we got it in place and then we started to put some dirt over top, like next to it. So it'll be about halfway up the board for the final root cellar itself. And as you can see, there's a lip all the way around. That lip is there so that the inner lid, when we make it, will go in there, and then another lid will go on the top. So essentially there's 2 lids that will go in, one on the inside and one on the outside. Those lids are actually essential for the function of the root cellar. The first lid will obviously keep the heat down, but with that air pocket, so there'll be a couple inches of space between the 2 lids, like 3 inches, 4 inches. And that air pocket helps keep it insulated, that buffer of air. So it's kind of an essential part. And then it'll be done. So just one more step and the root cellar's good to go. So a little update on the root cellar. I'm working on the lid today. Finally got around to it. And yeah, so I'm just gonna turn my camera around to show you. So I haven't actually put it together yet, but I did cut the wood. So what I'm going to do is, in our last root cellar, it was just a solid plywood with a handle on it. However, it would sweat a lot, so we'd have to put a stick in between the lid and the edge. And a lot of mice would get in, especially near the end of its life there, after 10 years, because it would sweat too much in there. So what we decided to do is to do a barnyard style lid, and I'm gonna leave this crack here for the ventilation. I am going to put a strip of mesh there so that the mice can't get through there, and then put some styrofoam underneath, some insulation just underneath the 2 halves, and leave that section open, and that will provide that aeration that it needs, that circulation. So I just placed these in. The reason why I did it this way instead of out is when you're working by yourself and you're not sure if things are completely square, to mitigate that and not have a square lid that doesn't fit in a hole that's not completely square, although I think it is, I just never tested. So I cut the pieces, laid them in, then put the 2 at the top and the bottom over there. Now I'm going to get some screws and screw them in, and then put a diagonal piece, and then put the handle, and then the mesh and the insulation, and it's done. Okay, so I have the lid all put together. You can see it's barn door style. I pulled it out so I can work on the outside of it now, or sorry, the inside of it. So I'm going to put some screen on it and then some insulation to keep mice out, and we often get crickets and a few other lovely little critters that love to try and get into the root cellar. I also had a little bit of that mesh, that wire mesh, left over from lining the actual root cellar itself. So I put that down the center and on the edges here, on the aeration holes, to also keep mice from crawling in there and getting into the root cellar anyway. As much as I want everything to find a nice comfy place to live and survive over the winter, I prefer not to be sharing my food. Even though the crack is filled, because there's little, just minor cracks in between here, I am going to put just a layer of screen over top of the entire back of the lid before I put the insulation on, just because like things that really want insulation are going to figure out how to bury in there and get it. So this will just be a little bit of extra protection, even though screen, mice can chew through screen if they really wanted to, but they won't be able to chew through that other stuff that's in the big parts. Okay, so I'm going to start stapling this down and be back with the next one. Okay, it's hot out here. Anyway, September 26th, and it is like silly hot out here. Anyway, besides the point. Ignore my sweaty grossness. It's time for the insulation part. So you can't see the crack underneath the insulation here, sorry, underneath the screen. However, it's here, right here. Well, maybe you can a little bit. So now I'm going to put the insulation from here to here on top, and that's just to make sure it stays temperate in the winter time, otherwise things freeze, and in the springtime it helps things keep a little bit cooler before everything. All right, so here's where the video is going to get a little bit on the redneck side. I have a beer cap. As you know, whenever you're screwing something, it's good to have washers. I don't have any washers, so I needed to improvise. So I'm going to use a beer cap. And because it's like almost 32 degrees out, I actually have a beer here today. Anyway, this is what you do. You take the beer cap, because we got to get the styrofoam to fit, and if you just put a screw through it, it's going to go right through the screw and it's not going to stay. Right? It's going to go right through, and your styrofoam's going to be flying off like crazy, and it's super annoying. Plus, what I really like about this is I don't have to go and buy washers. I'm repurposing something I already have. So just take the beer cap, or a washer, if you have a washer, kind of pop it in, take your screw, put your hole in there, take your drill, voila! Okay, there you have it, beer caps as washers. Now to go put it in the hole and see how it all fits. But I've measured it, should be fine. We'll find out. All right, so here's the hole in the ground cellar. I'm going to pop in there in a second, and the lid that we just finished with the beer cap washers, of course. So we're loading up the root cellar now. I got these lovely teenage boys here helping me with the heavy work. So as you can see, we just have them in buckets, and we can go one on top. So now we'll work on the second row of potatoes. There we go. And then the mixed buckets.
Oh, there's still more over there.
Yeah. So here you'll notice that there's sand. They're all in sand. What we do is put a layer of sand, a layer of potatoes, a layer of sand, a layer of potatoes, and that makes sure that the potatoes are not touching each other. And we did the same thing with the carrots and the beets. And that ensures if one decides to rot, it's not going to make the whole bucket rot. So super important. All right, let's go get the rest of the potatoes. Oh, look at that. A year's worth of food. We have way more room than we typically do. We have room for more. We don't have more. Air pockets between the two lids. That's absolutely necessary in order to keep insulation, that pocket of air in between the two lids stays warmer. And then when the cellar is also ventilating, it's circulating the air as well. So now we're just gonna let it snow, and the snow's gonna pile up. And when we want something, we're just gonna like dig it out and get what we need, put the lids back on, and throw the snow back on, and voila. And we will have food until next June, July, August. Like, we've eaten potatoes